In a recent video, we delved into the terrifying tragedy of John Edward Jones, who became trapped in Nutty Putty Cave in 2009. John's nightmare began with a wrong turn, leading him into a narrow passage where he found himself stuck in complete darkness. But shockingly, John wasn't the first to face such a grim ordeal. Back in 1965, Morris Bedsold experienced a hauntingly similar situation, echoing the events at Nutty Putty Cave. Like John, Morris took a wrong turn, wedging himself into a tight crevice with no way out. What followed was a nail-biting 25-hour rescue mission that forever highlighted the deadly risks of cave exploration. On a crisp autumn day, October 5th, 1965, 16 youths and 3 teachers from the Methodist children's home in Berea set off for a fun outing to Schonbrunn Village. But when a flat tire forced them to change plans, they ended up at Hinkley Reservation, home to Wildcat Cave. Excitement buzzed in the air as they approached the cave, especially for Morris, who could barely contain his excitement. Morris had been to Wildcat Cave before, but this time the experience would take a dangerous and unexpected twist. Wildcat Cave was a mystery, never fully mapped, and tucked into a sandstone cliff with an entrance that looked like a jagged, dark mouth. Locals loved the area, but inside the cave was a different story. It held a dark history, once serving as a hideout for criminals and runaway slaves. The moment you stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. A narrow passage stretched out for 80 feet before reaching a massive leaning rock, marking the start of an even larger chamber believed to have been used by escaped slaves on their journey to Canada. But navigating the passages was tricky. One wrong move, and you could easily lose your way. Morris, eager to show off, led the group through the cave, but his confidence quickly faded. After about 60 feet, the tunnel shrank, forcing him to squat and crawl. When he reached a large rock, he assumed it was the path to the chamber, and without hesitation, he pressed on. But as Morris crawled deeper into the crevice, the space tightened, and soon he was belly down, moving inch by inch in the pitch-black darkness. His body started to feel the pressure, yet Morris believed the chamber was just ahead. What he didn't realize was that he was crawling downhill, disoriented by the darkness. Then, disaster struck. He slipped into a 9-inch crack, pinning his hips and body, helpless and trapped. Morris screamed for his friends, but it took them a while to grasp the horror of his situation. Panicking, they ran for a teacher, who crawled in with a belt, desperate to save him. The teacher tried to lasso Morris's ankle, but when he pulled, the belt snapped, leaving Morris wedged even deeper in the rock. Panic set in, and the boy began to struggle to breathe as the weight of the cave pressed down on his chest. In the cold and darkness, the teacher could hear Morris begging for help, his voice laced with fear. Realizing they needed professional rescue, the teacher called for emergency responders. Fire Chief Paul Chadura arrived first with his squad, lighting the cave with a portable generator and piping oxygen to Morris. But the rescue was far from simple. Wildcat Cave's narrow passages made it nearly impossible to reach the trapped boy. As the hours dragged on, rescuers tried different techniques, from pulley systems to drilling through stone. Geologists feared a cave-in, and dynamite was ruled out. Time was ticking as the rescue mission extended through the night, with spectators, reporters, and relatives gathering at the scene. The nation was glued to the unfolding drama. Among the many who rushed to help was Evelyn Pinky Pettit, a tiny nurse from Akron. She wriggled into the cave to comfort Morris for nearly 3 hours, while the rescue team devised a new plan. Cave explorer Terry Brown suggested a new pulley system with a metal ring. But despite the team's best efforts, Morris barely moved before being pulled right back into his tight prison. By now, Morris's answers had become vague, and the clock was ticking. If he lost consciousness, the rescue could turn fatal, similar to what had happened to John Edward Jones in Nutty Putty Cave. Desperate, the rescuers brought in 15-year-old Eagle Scout Michael Ulrich. He managed to slip deeper into the crevice, closer to Morris than anyone before him. Michael passed Morris a rope, and after much struggle, got it over the boy's arms. With a mixture of strength and luck, rescuers pulled Morris free. After more than 24 agonizing hours, Cheers erupted as Morris was wrapped in a blanket and carried out of the cave, greeted by hundreds of spectators. His survival was nothing short of miraculous. The Park Service wasted no time dynamiting the back of Wildcat Cave, just as Nutty Putty Cave would later be sealed with concrete. But the lesson came too late for John Edward Jones, who tragically didn't make it out alive. If Morris had remained stuck despite the rescue efforts, the situation would have grown increasingly dire. Physically, the downward angle and tightness of the crevice would have caused his body to endure tremendous pressure, particularly on his chest, making it almost impossible for him to breathe properly. As compression asphyxia set in, Morris's oxygen levels would have decreased rapidly, leading to symptoms like lightheadedness, panic, and eventually unconsciousness. His trapped position would have impaired circulation, causing numbness in his lower body, and potentially leading to organ failure due to the lack of blood flow. With each passing hour, hypothermia would have become a greater threat. Wildcat Cave, like most caves, is cold and damp, which would have sapped Morris's body heat. Trapped without the ability to move, his body would have struggled to generate warmth, leading to shivering, confusion, and eventually, unconsciousness. The psychological toll of being trapped for so long, alone in the darkness with no means of escape, would have heightened his fear and desperation, pushing him towards shock, which could further worsen his breathing and heart rate. Rescue teams would likely have considered increasingly radical options, but each posed serious risks. Drilling into the cave walls or using heavy equipment to widen the passages would have been dangerous, potentially destabilizing the cave and causing a collapse. Given the delicate structure of caves like Wildcat, even slight vibrations could have shifted the rocks around Morris, making his situation even worse. The rescuers would have been forced to weigh the risk of accidentally sealing him in the cave forever, versus trying to reach him more quickly. This would have been an agonizing decision for the team. As the hours turned into days, exhaustion and frustration would have set in for the rescue workers. Their inability to pull Morris free, despite their best efforts, would have mirrored the tragic rescue attempts in other famous cave disasters. The media would have continued to cover the story in detail, creating a nationwide spectacle. Public outcry and concern would have grown as it became clear that time was running out for the boy. Morris's family and friends would have been plunged into despair as hope dwindled. If Morris eventually passed away while still trapped, the rescue operation would have shifted to a recovery mission, which might have faced additional complications. Extracting his body from the narrow crevice could have been deemed too dangerous, and much like in the Nutty Putty Cave disaster with John Edward Jones, there may have been no safe way to retrieve him. The cave might have been sealed with Morris's remains inside, as a permanent reminder of the risks posed by underground exploration. The long-term impact of such a tragedy would have reverberated beyond the immediate community. Wildcat Cave, already filled with history and legends, would have become infamous for the incident. The cave could have been closed to the public, with officials taking extra precautions to prevent another similar accident. The media coverage and public mourning would have likely led to national discussions on cave safety, sparking a movement to increase regulations and prohibit unsupervised exploration of dangerous cave systems. In the years following, Morris's story would have been remembered alongside other cave tragedies, like that of John Edward Jones. It would serve as a chilling reminder of the perils of uncharted caves and the inherent risks of pushing the boundaries of exploration. In light of recent events, several key precautions should be taken to prevent situations like Morris's near-fatal ordeal from happening again. First, one of the most important measures is ensuring that caves are thoroughly mapped and surveyed before any exploration takes place. Uncharted caves, like Wildcat Cave, pose significant dangers because the terrain and passage structures are unknown. To mitigate these risks, authorities should prioritize detailed mapping to identify potential hazards and establish safe routes through caves. Additionally, clear warning signs and barriers should be installed at cave entrances, particularly those leading to narrow or dangerous passages. These warnings should highlight the risks of getting stuck, disorientation in darkness, and other cave-specific dangers. In some cases, especially hazardous sections should be permanently blocked off to prevent entry. Another crucial step is implementing regulations and a permit system for cave exploration. This would ensure that only experienced and certified cavers, or groups accompanied by licensed guides, are allowed into potentially dangerous areas. This system would help prevent unauthorized and poorly equipped individuals from entering caves where they could be at serious risk. In addition, some caves, particularly those with higher risk factors, should only allow professional guided tours. This would ensure that inexperienced explorers aren't putting themselves in danger by wandering into uncharted or unstable parts of a cave.